So one of the lingering effects of the pandemic is that many people are still working remotely.
But working from home can come with some problems. One of them is online work harassment. In fact, a survey by the company All Voices found 38% of respondents experienced some kind of remote harassment.
So here to explore the issue is Shay Holman. She is executive director of the Purple Campaign, a nonprofit dedicated to eliminating workplace harassment. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, Shay, so help me out here. What does remote workplace harassment look like?
So, just like with in-person harassment, remote harassment can include any unwelcome behaviors that are frequent or severe enough that a reasonable person would think they create a hostile work environment. However, it will most likely be verbal or visual, so that could include anything like direct messages or emails that may have racial, gendered, or ableist slurs or name calling. It could be repeated unwelcome requests for dates. It also could include sending unsolicited nudes or sexually suggestive pictures. And this can happen during regular work hours, outside of regular work hours, and or indulging in these inappropriate behaviors on video calls. So staff who are used to engaging friends on social media with jokes and debates can sometimes forget that these online platforms are a professional forum still.
You know, just like it's so much easier for people to make comments on social media because they can hide behind that. Would you say it's easier then to harass people when you're working remotely instead of in-person work?
Something that we're seeing is that two of the risk factors, isolated and decentralized workplaces that are identified by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission for higher chances of harassment in a workplace, are now very common for a majority of employees. This results in no one being around to witness or intervene in harassment.
Yeah.
Like, harassers may feel unaccountable for their behaviors. And the channels through which remote work is occurring, like text and phone and video, are often unmonitored or unreported. So it's very difficult with these blurred lines to be able to monitor and or report the harassment.
Now, that type of harassment, of course, is jarring in person, but does the blurring of professional and personal spaces that happen when we're working remotely, does it make the harassment feel worse? I mean, the person harassed is at home, which is supposed to be a safe place.
I think what we've seen and what you've identified is this blurring between work and home means that there are significant consequences to someone who is experiencing or is subjected to workplace harassment. So being at home now, this is a place maybe someone could go and potentially be able to compartmentalize away from what happened during the workday or in the physical workspace. And now with all of these text channels, Slack channels, Zoom, people can reach you really any time of the day. And so not only are our workplace hours being blurred and when we're on the clock versus when we're off, but also the behavior that happened in the physical office is also occurring directly in your living room or your bedroom, for example. And we're also seeing people are now able to comment on the backgrounds of someone's home. So you might have something up in your home on your walls that coworkers weren't able to see before, and now they know this piece of your identity, and it could be potentially weaponized against you.
Would you say that there are some employers where they're more susceptible to this type of workplace or remote workplace harassment?
Any type of employer that is not updating their policies currently to fit the remote work environment, who are not training their employees in a way that addresses online harassment and harassment in the remote workforce, and also being really transparent with their employees that this is still happening and that they are going to take issues seriously, those would be the workplaces that we're seeing are at the most risk for continued workplace harassment in the remote workforce.
So, I mean, does being away from a physical workplace result in the victims not really knowing how to report these issues?
That's something we've seen, and we really encourage that employers have multiple channels for reporting, regardless of whether all of your employees are in the office, fully remote, or hybrid. There need to be multiple channels for reporting, including anonymous channels for reporting or hotlines where employees feel that they can go and be anonymous and make a report if they desire. But also you need to make sure your employees know about these hotlines or these ways to report, because people can't just walk into the office next door anymore and say, hey, do you have a second? It's really, you would need to be very transparent about what these forms of reporting are and what these channels are, so employees know where to go when they're by themselves working from home.
Well, I know you're part of the group, the Purple Campaign, and you're hoping to eliminate this kind of harassment in the workplace. But what would be your best advice then to people who are working remotely to try to prevent themselves from becoming a victim of this type of harassment?
So we always recommend always be on the lookout, right? So even if you're not physically in the office, doesn't mean that you can't be aware that it is potentially happening to your colleagues. Be aware of what it looks like. So a lot of times, training is a really big piece that we advocate for, so that employees have examples of what it might look like if they're being harassed via a Slack channel, for example, or over Zoom. Because a lot of times if you can't identify, then you can't report and nothing can be done. And so we want survivors to know that they are not alone, that this is something that affects a lot of people. And we also want employers to make it very clear that just because people aren't in the physical workplace doesn't mean they're not going to take these issues seriously, and that managers need to call this out and report it when it happens, even over remote channels.
Okay, but I guess the bottom line is if you feel you are the victim of this type of workplace harassment, even remotely, you got to tell someone.
We always encourage reporting, and obviously it's on the survivor's timeline. We never want anyone to feel pressured to come forward, but know that there are resources out there that can assist, and there are people out there that are going through the same thing, and that you are not alone in this.
All right, Shay. Shay Holman of the Purple Campaign, thanks so much for being here this morning and for your great advice.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.